Hey everybody, you're watching Ready Set Drone, and today I have the X130T. This is made by XK. It's a little FPV racer, and it's a great little training FPV racer, and I'll tell you why as soon as we get back. Alright, so first of all, thanks to GearBest for supplying the X130T. Designed by XK. I've had a couple of XK quads before, kind of mixed reviews of them. Some of them have been really good, some not as great, but they're always pretty well designed and have a nice fit and finish to them for a very reasonable price. Now this one is an FPV racer. It does broadcast over 5.8 gigahertz, which means you can use Fat Sharks or Amway or any other 5.8 gigahertz FPV goggles or screens. I prefer goggles. I have a pair of Fat Shark Dominator 2s. That's what I'm going to use. But let's check this thing out. I have to say it's a very cool looking little quad. It feels like a carbon fiber frame. I'm not sure about that, but it's tiny. It's a pretty small little guy. You can see right here. It is a 130, which means it's 130 millimeters diagonally from here to here. 130 millimeters. That number usually designates that. I've actually already flown it a bit, and I have to say the FPV on it is really good. The control of it, it's very easy to fly. It does have both an acro and a stabilized mode, 6-axis stabilization, but I haven't tried the acro mode yet. I'm going to try it here in just a minute. But in 6-axis stabilization, it's very easy to fly. One other thing I really like it is it has these little rubber feet on the bottom. A lot of these quads, when you bring them in and you land them on a hard surface, they kind of bounce. These really set it down pretty gently. So even when I just drop it here on this table, you'll hear, see how it just kind of like goes right down into position. Now I don't think you could actually plug this into Clean Flight or Beta Flight and do any sort of tweaking to it. It's got a very small 1S battery. That's this little guy right here. And this is a pretty standard size hobby battery, which is nice because it has the low-C connector on the end, and you can get several of these and fly them. You don't have to get a specific battery designed for this. This is a standard low-C connector that will work with any quad that has this. As a matter of fact, I think this is the same battery that's in the SEMA X5C, which is one of my favorite beginner quads. It's a 700 milliamp hour, 1S 3.7 volt. So 700 milliamp hours is actually pretty good size, meaning that you'll have a fair amount of flight time with this battery. If you had a 500 milliamp hour or a 400 milliamp hour, you wouldn't get as much flight time, but you could still fly it if it's a 1S with a low-C connector and it fits into this slot. It's also nice because it comes with a charger that has 2 slots for charging these. So it's a USB charger, USB on one end, and 2 slots on the other. So if you do have multiple batteries, you're going to be able to charge more than one. The battery slides right into the back right here, and you got to kind of make sure you get it in there the right way. You want to make sure it's in all the way because that'll throw the balance off if you're not, if you're halfway out or just not in all the way. And then once you do that, the cord is just the right length to plug into the connector here. I will say it's easier if you actually start with it about halfway out and then plug it in and then push it in the rest of the way, because when it's in all the way, the cord just barely reaches and it's hard to get it around. But I like that the cord's not too long because that avoids issues with it hitting the props when you're flying. It did come with 4 prop guards, and it looks like they just click into place. I'm not using them because I'm flying outside in a pretty big space, and like I said, this thing is fairly easy to fly if you're an experienced FPV pilot. If you're a beginner and you're flying indoors or you're just flying indoors, I'd recommend putting the prop guards on. And actually, now that I say it, I can see there's some little tiny screws in there that you use to put the prop guards on. So it'd be a bit of an exercise to get them on, but if you're going to fly indoors or if you're new to FPV, I'd recommend using them. So the little XK controller that comes with it is standard toy copter fare. It's not a very good controller. I did read in the manual that you could actually fly this thing with, I believe it's a Futaba transmitter. Yeah, so you could fly this thing with a Futaba. It sounds like it uses the same protocol as a receiver that will talk to a Futaba transmitter. I don't have one, so I'm going to use the one that came with the package. It's well built enough. And you know, one thing that I am pretty happy about with this quad is, you know, it doesn't have an app you have to download. There's nothing special you have to do to it. You just can plug it in and fly it line of sight, or you can plug it in, put on some goggles, and fly it with FPV goggles. Now, a couple of other comments about it. In order to switch between the stabilized and acro mode, you actually push in the right stick. You hear that clicking sound? That's me pushing in the right stick, and that's going to switch it between stabilized and acro mode, number one. In order to calibrate the gyroscopes, you pull both sticks down and to the left, and while it's sitting on a level surface, I recommend that when you plug the battery in, you turn the radio on, it all establishes a connection. Pull those two sticks down and to the left for a second, let the gyros and everything, the accelerometers and everything calibrate, so then it'll fly a lot better. And then one other thing to keep in mind about it is it does have a transmitter built in with this little cloverleaf antenna. There are dip switches on the transmitter, so you could actually change the signal or the frequency at which it's transmitting out to your Fat Sharks or other goggles. Now that's good if you're going to fly multiple of these around. You don't want to be on the same channel as your buddy if you're racing. For just flying by yourself though, it doesn't really matter. You can leave it in the default channel. There are instructions in the manual on how to change them and what frequencies you can go to. Now I don't think the camera is tiltable. I haven't figured out any way to tilt it. So, hey everybody, you're watching Ready Set Drone, and today I have the X130T. This is made by XK. It's a little FPV racer, and it's a great little training FPV racer, and I'll tell you why as soon as we get back. Alright, so first of all, thanks to GearBest for supplying the X130T designed by XK. I've had a couple of XK quads before, kind of mixed reviews of them. Some of them have been really good, some not as great, but they're always pretty well designed and have a nice fit and finish to them for a very reasonable price. Now this one is an FPV racer. It does broadcast over 5.8 gigahertz, which means you can use Fat Sharks or Amway or hey everybody, you're watching Ready Set Drone, and today I have the X130T. This is made by XK. It's a little FPV racer, and it's a great little training FPV racer, and I'll tell you why as soon as we get back. Alright, so first of all, thanks to GearBest for supplying the X130T designed by XK. I've had a couple of XK quads before, kind of mixed reviews of them. Some of them have been really good, some not as great, but they're always pretty well designed and have a nice fit and finish to them for a very reasonable price. Now this one is an FPV racer. It does broadcast over 5.8 gigahertz, which means you can use Fat Sharks or Amway or hey everybody, you're watching Ready Set Drone, and today I have the X130T. This is made by XK. It's a little FPV racer, and it's a great little training FPV racer, and I'll tell you why as soon as we get back. Alright, so first of all, thanks to GearBest for supplying the X130T designed by XK. I've had a couple of XK quads before, kind of mixed reviews of them. Some of them have been really good, some not as great, but they're always pretty well designed and have a nice fit and finish to them for a very reasonable price. Now this one is an FPV racer. It does broadcast over 5.8 gigahertz, which means you can use Fat Sharks or Amway or any other 5.8 gigahertz FPV goggles or screens. I prefer goggles. I have a pair of Fat Shark Dominator 2s. That's what I'm going to use. But let's check this thing out. I have to say it's a very cool looking little quad. An acro mode. Most of these little quads are stabilized only. They might have different rates of stabilization where it's more aggressive or less aggressive. This one actually has acro mode. So if you're going to really get into FPV flying, you got to practice acro mode. I hate it, but I'm getting better and better at it, and it's making me a better pilot. The next thing is it has interchangeable batteries. These things are the same batteries that come with the SEMA X5C and lots of other quads. They're small, they're light, and they're very cheap. And so I have lots of these, and that's why I've been able to fly this so much over the last day and a half. If I only had 1 or 2 batteries, then I'd be having to wait for them to recharge all the time. So having this generic battery is fantastic. And then finally, I'll say that it's so lightweight that when you crash it, it's not likely to cause any damage or to hurt anybody. FPV is hard, and so as you're learning to fly FPV, having a lightweight drone that you can fly in a small space is really nice. So I highly recommend the XK X130T as a beginner FPV quad. For $100, you get the whole kit minus the goggles. You got to buy your own goggles. So if you're going to get into FPV racing, I strongly recommend checking this thing out. I've got a link in the description with the full specs and the pricing and all that stuff. Well worth checking out for $100. It's a quality little quad, and like I said, it's my new favorite FPV racer. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, and we'll see you next time on Ready Set Drone. Thanks for watching.